All right, today we're going to be talking about drum mixing. This video is going to be a little strange because I'm also making it for some people I know. A lot of people I know use Logic, so I'm going to be kind of showing alternatives for plugins that you could use in Logic as we move along. I've already got all my drums routed here. If you don't know how to do that, I have a video already on how to do it in Reaper, but if you need to know how to do it in Logic, there's a great video by Nolly Get Good. Shows you how to do it in like less than 10 minutes. If you need that, let me know. I'll send it to you. But we're going to get started, assuming that you already have your drums routed to be isolated. Like we have our kick, snare, rack, floor, all our cymbals in our room. We're going to be using One Kit Wonder Metal today. When I was routing this, I was having issues specifically with the kick drum. I was getting bleed from the rest of the kit in my kick track. I'm going to show you how to solve that issue if that ever happens to you with any other drum programs. But yeah, we're going to get started. Before we even do anything, one thing I like to do in this mixer section is solo the room. And I've already done some balancing, but I'll kind of talk to you about what I did. So this is what our room track sounds like soloed. If you click this mixer tab in One Kit Wonder Metal, it pulls up your mixer section, and these balance faders here are going to be what we're mostly dealing with. We're dealing with the room in isolation, but if we click kick balance, we can control how much kick is feeding into this room track here. So if you see, if I bring this up, we can get some more kick in that room. I like just a subtle amount of it. In my rooms, I like mostly shells because I like to make my rooms explosive, and I like to layer that sound on top of the close mics. So I like very small amounts of cymbals. So if you go over here to room and click balance, you can actually control that. These are usually pretty high up here. I like to pull them all down so they're just kind of barely being heard. I think that's that's an important step in my mixing process. Because again, I like to make those rooms explosive. So treat the room, get it kind of in a good spot that to your ear. And then we can start going through and mixing individual elements. So this is what the kit sounds like out of the box. We're going to start with kick drum. I'm going to play it, and you're going to be able to notice that thing I was talking about. We're getting bleed from the rest of the kit. Normally not a problem with digital drums. Normally this is something you only have to deal with live drums, but not the biggest issue in the world. We can just gate it to be more of just the kick. I'm going to be using Virtual Mixtrack's gate, but you can use Logic's noise gate. Looks like this. Just be able to pull that up. And so you'll notice that kick is hitting real high up here on our input meter. And I'm just trying to get it to right where that kick ends. We're not getting too much of the rest of that information. We also don't want to lose that punch of the kick drum, though. See how that's sounding with this kit. All right, that'll work. Just trying to get that kick more isolated. Next, I would probably do some EQ to shape the kick. If you're using Logic, you can use I believe it's called channel. Yes, you can use this channel EQ. Bring up just a little bit of that sub information, probably around 15 hertz. Rolling that off. I usually like to cut mids on my metal kicks. If you look at that shape here, it's already got a decent cut. I'm going to do just a little bit more. I'm going to add some clicky characteristics. Kind of like in around 2K. Not going to do too much to the low end. We have a trick for that we will do later. Just doing a quick little shape here. Digging that. Next, I would probably compress. I like to do EQ before compression, just because we're really cleaning up the signal. We're making sure frequencies that we don't want are being removed before we compress, because compression is going to make everything a little bit more noticeable to the ear. We just want to make sure we have the majority of the sound figured out before we hit compression. And again, right now, all we've done is gated, cut out some mids, added some click, took out a little bit of sub information. This is console emulation. Don't think Logic has something like that I'm aware of, so I'm going to take that out. We're not going to use it. I am going to aim for probably around 5 to 7 gain reduction. And what that means is the compressor is pulling the volume of the transient down 7 dB. And I'll kind of quickly explain the controls here. We're doing 1-to-1, so no matter what I do, we're not going to get any gain reduction, because it's just a 1-to-1 ratio. But if I increase this ratio, it'll be more aggressive. Unless I just hit nuke and we're already hitting 5. A compressor you could use is it's just literally called compressor in Logic. I believe this has a bunch of different flavors at the top here. I would probably use VCA, any style of these VCAs for kick probably. And what I'm trying to achieve here with this move is to just really make sure the kick is consistent. We humanize, obviously, when we are writing. Then we take this to squash the sound, so it's just kind of a consistent volume throughout. This also might add some aggression. So I'm going to A-B this real quick, and I'll kind of talk about what I did. This is before. That initial hit of the actual beater hitting the kick drum is nice and loud, but everything else kind of quickly recedes. I don't want all of it to recede, so I'm squashing it. So everything is kind of closer to the same volume. Let's hear how this sounds in context. I'm going to turn everything off here in just a second. This is without. Doesn't sound bad, it just doesn't sound very tight or controlled than with. It's much punchier. That's just with EQ and compression. Again, I'm only doing about 5 to 7. Looks like it's hitting 8 or 9 at the max. I'm going to trim some of the volume just to make sure we're not clipping or anything. Got some headroom there. Next, I'm going to probably do one more stage of EQ. And you can just use your channel EQ in Logic. Looks like some of that sub is back, so I'm going to cut around 15. Just a subtle amount, cleaning up that low. And then we are going to add some low with a Pultec style EQ. I'm going to be using Waves version, but I believe it's just called Vintage Tube EQ. In Logic, they have their own stock version, and you're going to want this specifically this top section here for our kick method. And what this EQ allows us to do is boost very specific bass and treble frequencies to do some cool shaping. It just has a unique curve, and all a curve is like this would be a curve, this little bell shape here. This just has its own like little proprietary shape that sounds pretty cool. I like to start trying at 60 and just adding some low end. I'm going to absolutely exaggerate this just so you can hear it. That's kind of what we're adding, but I'm going to back this off until I feel like it's adding it without, being too drastic. If we attenuate, this is boosting, this is going to carve frequencies slightly below or slightly above the 60 hertz range. So I usually just like to carve out a tiny amount, add a healthy amount of that. And I don't necessarily do this every time, but at least try, see if we can get some cool click characteristics out of any of these frequencies here. I'm going to exaggerate the volume just so I can hear what they're adding. Kind of like 8 and 12. Let's see how 8 sounds in context. That's sounding pretty good. I'm going to A-B real quick. I'm going to turn all the kick effects off. Again, doesn't sound bad, but just a little low energy. I'm going to turn it back on in 3, 2, 1. It's a much tighter and more controlled sound, which is perfect for metal. We're going to do one more trick. I'm going to do some multi-band compression, which allows me to target specific frequency ranges. Let's see if they have some sort of multi-band. Surely they do. Designer. Designer, Alchemy, synth. What we need. Interesting. Well, I will do some research and see if we can find a free multi-band for anybody that needs it. But I'm still going to show you this trick because I love this trick. I'm going to bypass everything but this kind of low mid channel here. And with these little sliders up here, I can dictate the frequency range that I'm hitting. Most of the time, kick fundamentals are usually around 60 hertz, so that's usually where I start. And then I go anywhere from 100 to 200. Probably do 60 to 150. What this is going to allow me to do is target this specific range. By default, it's going to be pulling it down, but we can actually boost. I'm going to start with like maybe 4 dB. Bring this range down so it's not sucking anything out. I don't want that to be hanging around too long because we still want that tightness. This is without it. And then with it. Just add some really cool low end punch to your kick drum. Let's hear how that sounds in context. See, now that kick drum's sounding pretty massive and beefy. Let's go ahead and tackle some snare now. Going to be using probably some similar methods. Probably use all the same plugins that you just used, but on this track. Looks like our dominant snare frequencies right here at 200 hertz. I don't want too much of that sub, so I'm going to probably roll off to around 50. And probably actually going to do this in context. I'm just going to sweep around and see if we can find some frequencies that we absolutely hate. a huge fan of that boxy range. I'm gonna try cutting some of that. And it looks like, even though this is our fundamental, the actual ring of the snare is closer to 300 hertz. So if I wanted more ring, I could boost that. Just a cool way to add some of that ring. Looks like we have an octave of some sort. I'm actually not hating that. Yeah, just doing some slight cleaning. We would probably then do another stage of compression. I might actually throw some flavor, another flavor of EQ on board that compression. That would be, see if we can find it here. You could use this vintage console EQ. You could also use this vintage graphic EQ. You could also do the same move with the channel EQ. But I'm probably just going to try to add some low punch. I'm going to click this bell. You would just do a bell shape on if you're doing the channel. This has a specific bell shape right here. And all of these are probably going to be bell shapes of some kind. So I'm just going to try and boost some lower section, maybe like 100. Just to beef up that snare a little bit. Do some compression. Probably start 2 to 1, 3 to 1. Hear how this sounds before. Doesn't sound bad, just kind of the tail end of it sounds a little interesting. Width, it's kind of ducked down, which we can address here in a second. Definitely more consistent though. So I'm actually going to throw a transient shaper on here at the very beginning of our chain, before our EQ and our compression. It's at the top here. I'm just going to add some attack. I'm going to go aggressive with this here. Notice this affects the ghost notes as well, so you can go overboard with that. The reason why I like this groove that we're using here is because it kind of showcases that. Definitely feel like we need some punch out of that. We can also control the tail end here if we increase the sustain. Or we can make it really short. That's all going to be flavor and taste. If you want a real short, tight snare, that might work for your sound. If you want something more explosive, just increase that sustain. And I imagine they have some sort of... Do they really not have a transient shaper? Well, this one I'm using is actually free. If you want that, I can link you. This company, Kilohertz, has an entire free suite, including this transient shaper. So far we've done on the snare is we shaped the transient a little bit. We made the initial spike louder. We also increased the sustain so it hangs around a little bit longer. Boosted some low mids and a little bit of the fundamental. Cut out just a little bit of the 800s. And then we've also compressed. I'm going to experiment with something here. forgetting you don't have multiband, so we're actually gonna not do that. I'll show you another cool trick that we can do to kind of tame this high end. Try some distortion on our compressor here. It's pretty cool. Let me fact check this before I tell you and find out later that I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure with the stock Logic compressor, I believe 1176 is a FET compressor. Let's see if they have one. Okay, so Studio FET looks like it is the black version of the 1176. So if you pull up your compressor and click the Studio FET button, you will get this same style of compression that I'm about to do to the snare. I like to keep things mono for my shells. So this is without it. Now I'm going to kind of dial in an aggressive sound here. Without it. It really just shapes the transient some more. It really balances it out, but it also like kind of makes that ringy characteristic stick around, which I really like. Like, let's hear that in context. Like maybe without it. And we can go even more aggressive with it. So say you actually kind of hate that ring. Try experimenting with cutting some of these ringy frequencies here. I actually think that cutting that cleans it up a little bit. That sounds pretty good for now. You'd think I would just keep moving down the list, but we're actually gonna jump straight to rooms. That's another huge part of our shell sound. I'd probably use a VCA style compressor for rooms. You want something relatively fast. Could try that 1176 style. Just go ahead and keep using this distressor. Oh, I do some decently aggressive. Hear how that sounds? I'm going to bring the kick and snare back in. Don't like to go too crazy on the rooms. I'm just really trying to achieve something simple, which is make that snare a little more explosive and maybe the kick just a little fatter. Let's see, the most of our snare information is in this range. So if I boost these, that snare will really start to come through. I'm going to trim off some of this sub because we don't need a whole lot of that. And also try to tame some of that ring in the room. Still not as explosive as I want it. I'm gonna keep this room isolated. Maybe do some more aggressive compression. Without that compression. Pull this input down to kind of get closer to where it was at. It's feeling pretty good. This is a volume fader. I'm gonna try and boost it up from here. Feel like we're still getting now a little bit too much kick in that room. So what I'm going to do is go back in our drum program, pull up the mixer, put a kick balance, and bring that room down slightly. I want that kick to stay nice and tight. Let's go ahead and do a quick A/B from the beginning. This is with everything turned on. And this is with everything turned off. And we've only tackled kick and snare and room so far. And as you can tell, kick was a little bit involved. We aren't doing a whole lot yet. Already adding a lot of energy and a lot of life and a lot of punch with just those little quick moves. Toms are going to be very specific to the style and genre. So let's go ahead and touch on some of this floor time. Again, I usually like to start with some EQ to kind of clean it up for your channel EQ and Logic. Looks like that's our ring, but this is our note fundamental. It's actually being hit. See if we can get some of that weird basketball weird sound. Usually around 900. Put some of these mids out. Don't want to go too aggressive. Around 400 hertz, just cutting a little bit of that. See if we can get some high end. See how that sounds in context. Let me double check this room. There's quite a bit of tom there. So what I'm going to do is go to our mixer. Let's see which one it's hitting. It's that one. It should be tom 4, actually. So I'm going to go to tom 4, balance, bring that room down. Don't want to lose it entirely, but I don't want it to overwhelm the sound of the close mic. Hear that sound. Much cleaner. Now I'd probably do some compression. I start with 3:1, 4:1 ratio. High passing on the compressor and adding a slight amount of distortion to it. Sounding pretty good. Let me compare volume. That's taking care of some of that click I don't like. I'm going to give it a slight volume boost. Cool. Toms, especially the lower tuned you go, the like floor toms and stuff, they're gonna ring out quite a bit. That could be problematic. So I'm gonna show you a cool way to take care of that with a gate. Again, you can just use Logic's stock gate. But see how that initial hit's hitting up here, and then that ring is kind of slowly climbing down. We just need to put our threshold slightly above that ringing section. And that already sounds pretty natural, just putting it right there. Hear how that sounds in context. Just allows that toms to get out of the way because the drums pick right back up after that. And a little bit of ring is necessary, makes it feel natural, but just being able to control that with a gate is pretty important. And most of the time, toms, you can pretty much do similar moves and tricks for each tom. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this over to our other tom tracks. This says floor, but it's obviously a rack. I don't need to cut as much. I copied this over, but now we can just make fine-tune adjustments. Pull that gate down slightly because it's not as loud. Let's see how that's sounding. But yeah, I usually am pretty simple on toms. I don't like to do too much. I like to just shape it. It's really important to have a good tom sound from the get-go. Otherwise, you're going to be going down a rabbit hole. Luckily, One Kit Wonder's metal toms sound pretty good. So just did some basic EQ, some basic compression on the toms. Let's look at if they have some sort of saturation. Looks like the vintage graphic EQ has some. I know I've seen friend use it. I know Logic has a stock distortion plugin. You can do that for this next section about the tag hole with this hi-hat. It's very interesting that I'm not receiving. Oh, that's right. I don't think One Kit Wonder has a hi-hat routing. It does not. So we're going to have to mix the hi-hat and cymbals as a whole, which is fine. Saves us time. Normally, I'd have my hi-hat on its own microphone or own track to be affected. But let's go ahead and let's tackle overheads then. Not a whole lot of low-end information, but we still don't really want too much of that. Probably put up to 75. Our snare is mostly in this range. A lot of our cymbals are hanging out over here. If we boost this, it's kind of some, I would call it mud, but it's not really too offensive. Wouldn't mind getting a little bit of snare out of this track. Someone try and find it. Right there. Just a hint of that. Probably bring the volume up slightly. I typically try to avoid compression on overheads because cymbals can get very washy and unintelligible quickly. But I am not opposed to doing some distortion. Actually, we will probably try I don't think Logic would have that, but this is just a normal saturation plugin. Logic would have something like this. I like my cymbals to be very glossy, so I'm just going to try and see if I can dial some of that in. I can go super aggressive with my distortion and then play the mix wet. Or I can go subtle and just have it fully wet. Which I'm not absolutely hating. Sounding pretty good. Let's hear how that room's sounding. I still want it to be almost slightly more explosive. So we're going to do 2 stages of compression. You could just use 2 of... Where's it at? You could use 2 of these and just try 2 different types layered on the same chain. It's like we have our first stage of compression, and then right below that we have another stage. I just want it to be a little bit more explosive. This is without it. So we're doing 2 stages. This one's just kind of lifting it up a little bit more. Not so much worried about the initial spike, the initial hit, but more the tail end of the information. Let's hear how that sounds in context. And let's hear how everything sounds with all plugins turned off. Check out the snap section as well. Plugins are still turned off. And this is what it sounds like with them. Already a lot more energy, a lot more punch, a lot more low end. That'd be a pretty good starting point for some demo drums. And we could take this a step further. And I'm going to bus all of these to a track. So now if I solo this, it'd be the entire drum kit. What that allows me to do is do some EQ as a whole. So I can affect literally everything with this EQ. So it'll allow me to kind of add some more oomph to certain areas. And then we can do some bus compression to really glue it and all tighten it together. Again, you could just use Logic stock plugin for this. We just want a little bit. See, we're not even hitting 4 dB. So without it. This is with it. Definitely making it tighter, but we're losing some volume. So I'm going to boost it a little bit. Without it, everything's a lot more center focused and a lot punchier. This just kind of helps smooth out those dynamics across the board. So you can do your individual processing with your isolated mics, your kicks, snares, rooms, all that. Then you can feed them into a bus. Do some more shaping if you feel like there's anything else you can add. And then you can run everything through a bus style compressor, which is just a compressor that's meant for handling a wide range of audio, not just like a single source. It's got like drums, guitars, a bunch of stuff, anything feeding into it. Allows you to process it as a whole. It helps glue everything together, makes it feel like it's part of the same track. That'll probably do it for this video, but let's just do one more quick A-B before and after. I lied. We're gonna touch on one more thing. If you have the FG Gray compressor, one thing that is pretty common that I like to do as well is I really like to mix my snares almost too loud, and then I like to dial them back with this compressor here. So if you see our gain reduction, I'm mostly wanting this to only trigger on the snare. You'll notice when that snare hits, it really pulls it down. Hear what that sounds like without it. That snare's really cutting through. Then with it, kind of pushes that snare back. On its own, it might sound like that's a bad thing, but in a lot of cases, it allows you to go aggressive with your snare, not having to worry too much about levels. You can just go for an explosive sound. But a lot of times, once you start adding guitars and bass and stuff, it can get a little overwhelming, which is where this trick kind of comes in handy, because you can kind of choose where that snare is sitting in the mix. But yeah, that'll probably do it for this video. We'll probably be doing more drum mix tutorials here soon, but just wanted to do a quick and dirty one for people out there trying to make demos. We'll see you soon. Peace.